Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello dear students, welcome to another lecture. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the summary of the chapter 5, that is the ambitious guest. So this story written by Hawthorne is basically about life and the unexpected twists and turns that your destiny, your fate may bring to your life. The story opens with a family that lived on a mountain, and the position where their cottage was situated was indeed very dangerous, with a huge tower of mountain over their head and the huge stones and rocks of the mountains falling every now and then. The family had a father, mother, they had a daughter, the grandmother. Besides, there were a few more children. We have been told that this family was a very calm and a peaceful family who enjoyed each other's company and was full of love. Their cottage basically served as a hotel for those travelers who would pass that notch, and in order to spend a night or maybe a couple of hours, who wanted to rest for some time, they would come to their hotel, would get food, would get shelter, would get warmth, and in addition to it would get a lot of love from the family members. Similar kind of a welcome was given to the guest who came to their house, who came to their cottage. His his arrival at the house was a little dramatic, because when he was entering the house, there was a very sharp wind which was blowing, and that sound of the wind was very depressive and it resembled somebody's cries and wails. But this man entered. Although he was a little irritated at once because of the very difficult trail, very difficult path that he had to cross in order to reach there. But the moment he entered and saw the smiling faces, the warm room and the open hearts of the family members, he felt very nice. He started sharing with them his ambitions. He started sharing with them his desires. He told them that he dreamt of having a monument or a good tomb made for himself once he dies, so that the people would remember him. Listening to him, the father, he also spoke what was there in his heart. He also shared with the other family members that he himself wanted to move on to a house which was at a safe place with a good neighbor, group of neighbors, and he wanted to be the squire of that place and ultimately be buried in a tomb with a few hymns written on it. The mother, she got a little emotional when she heard that. And then obviously they started sharing with each other their desires. The young boy shared his desire of going to the flume of the basin and drinking water out of it. It was then when they heard the sound of a wagon outside the house. The daughter told the father that the men were calling his name, but the father did not wish to look too interested in getting and welcoming the people in his house in lieu of some money. The people went away from there. The stranger then saw that the girl was a little sad, and he asked her the reason, and the girl replied that she felt a little lonely at times. The writer then told us that there were sparks of love that were arising between the two of them, the stranger as well as the young daughter. Then the grandmother shared with them her desire. She told them that she had heard there was this superstition that if the corpse was not looking good and the clothes or anything of the corpse was not set okay, then the corpse actually would use its own hands to set them all right. So the grandmother instructed her daughters and sons that when I die, you need to hold a mirror in front of my face. Maybe I would just want to have a look at myself. Now, when they were all discussing this, suddenly there was a huge sound which could be heard. The sound of the wind, it got drearer, it got very sharp, it got very angry, and they all realized that it was a landslide. So there was a landslide. The entire family rushed out of their cottages to a place which according to them was safe, but it wasn't, because the entire house got down, the entire side of the mountain came down because of the landslide. The family died, their bodies could never be found. On the contrary, the house they had left was not touched by a single piece of rock. Even the windows were unharmed. After their death, the entire, the neighborhood, the people who knew them, they talked about how good and how famous these people were. Their story has been termed as a legend. It has also been told that the poets are going to write poems on these people, the family. On the other hand, the youth, the guest who aspired to be famous after he dies, was not even known whether he had died or not. There was no proof of the fact that the man had also died with the family. Some believed he was there, some believed that he was nowhere in the picture. And such was the death of the man who wanted to be known, was now unknown. Nobody knew whether he was alive or he had died. Such was the fate that he had in his life. So with this, my dear students, we've come to the end of the chapter. Let us discuss the back exercises. So which of the followings is not a correct synonym for fate? So it is coincidence. Coincidence is not the synonym. Synonym means something which has the same meaning. So fate, kismet, providence, serendipity, these are all the similar meanings of the word fate, but not coincidence. Which of the following sentences is not an example of personification? So what is not an example of personification? The notch is just like a pipe of great pair of bellows. It has blown a terrible blast in my face. This is personification. The notch, the stones have been compared to that of to the bellows. The old mountain has thrown a stone at us. So a mountain throwing the stone, yes. The wind came through the notch and seemed to pause, rattling the door with the sound of wailing. Now the wind crying and lamenting is again personification. So what is not a personification is the last one. The eldest daughter was the image of happiness. So here it is a comparison which is being drawn. So it is a metaphor, it is not a personification. Which of the following is suitable as an alternative title for the story? So what title can you give to the story? We can say The Common Fate. So the family as well as that stranger had a common destiny that they shared with each other. The romantic pass of the Notch is a great artery. The shores of St. Lawrence on the other. What does this metaphor mean? So what was the meaning of this metaphor? This metaphor simply meant that, yes. So the river flowing through the mountain pass of the Notch provides sustenance to the people on either side of the mountain? No, there was nothing mentioned in the story with respect to the water giving livelihood to the people. People living on the either side of the mountain travel through the pass frequently to meet and converse with their family. Was this family so important that the people would come from both the directions to talk to them? No. The mountain pass is an important route for trading. So when one had to travel from one region to the other for trade, for business, they had to cross that notch. Which of the following sentences is not a portent of the disaster to come, a signal of the disaster that was to come? The family was situated in the notch of the White Hills, where the wind was sharp throughout the year and pitilessly cold in the winter. So, just telling us where the family's house, where the cottage was situated, that it was very windy, it was very cold, that does not mean there was something dangerous. On the other hand, if you look at the other options given, I wonder how the mariners feel when the ship is sinking. Now, talking about somebody's death is a symbol, it is a sign. There was a wail along the road as if a funeral was passing. This again is a sign of something bad which was about to come. And hearing the footsteps of somebody as if it heralded something, it signaled something, as if there was a moaning sound coming from somewhere. This again was a signal of something bad that was to happen. Okay. Read the lines and answer the questions that follow. Perhaps a germ of love was springing there in their hearts, so pure that it might blossom in paradise, since it could not be matured on earth. Were the young man and the daughter a good match? Do you think they were a good match? Yes, indeed, they were a good match. The young man, as has been described, was a very respectable man. He was very contemplative. He was very dignified. And the girl, on the other hand, was very simple, was very innocent, and was a mountain nymph, as the word has been used in the chapter. Why could their love grow only in the paradise? So, why could it grow only in the paradise? Because as we have just read, their destiny, their fate was interlinked, and they both were about to die, and that is why the writer has mentioned that their love was now going to blossom. It is now going to grow only in heaven. Why do you think the daughter felt lonesome? So, according to you, why did the girl feel lonely? According to me, the girl felt lonely because she was obviously a young girl and there was no company that she had at the place where she lived. As we've seen, the house was also such that there was no neighbor, no neighborhood that they had. So, she missed company. Children, it will haunt me night and day till I tell you. Who's the speaker here? Who said this? It was the grandmother who was talking to the children. What will haunt the speaker? The recurrence of the thought that if she dies and if there is anything wrong with her clothes and her physical appearance, then she might, after dying also, would use her hands to make them set all right. How does the speaker's telling add to the story? Obviously, the grandmother, who probably did not mention anything about death, was now suddenly talking about her death. It was an indication that there was certainly something bad written in their fate. How does the writer describe the peace and contentment in the family? In the very first paragraph, it has been told to us that there was a lot of peace and contentment in the family. The faces of the family members, it was very glad. The daughter was a sign of happiness at 17. The grandmother was the sign of happiness when grown old. The children were all cheerful. The father was an embodiment of strength. The mother was a symbol of support. So this is how the positivity of the family has been brought to the readers. So this is given in the very first paragraph of this chapter. What is the most important feature of the young man's character? So what have we been told about the young man's character? We have been told that the man was very ambitious. He was very dignified. He commanded a lot of respect for himself. He wanted to be known even after he dies. Yet, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to add on. Yet, it has been told to us that despite being so dignified and respect commanding, his nature was such that he did not mind bending low when he comes across somebody who was not of that stature. So, he was kind of adaptable, we can say, who knew how to behave and where to behave in what manner. What does the father aspire to be? The father aspired to be a squire. He wanted to have a good house at a place which was not prone to any dangers, was not prone to any risks, and he wanted to be known by his neighbors as a very honest and a very good man. Why is the opening scene important? So, the opening scene is important in the story because, as we have been told, it talks about the forecoming fate of this family. It gives us an indication of the fact that the family was destined to go through something very bad by the end of the story. And that is why the words like wailing, funeral, moans, such words have been used throughout the plot. How does the writer contrast the young man with the eldest daughter of the family? So yes, the two had contrasting natures, as I told you, where on one hand the guest was ambitious, he was dignified, he commanded respect, he wanted to be immortal, he wanted to get earthly immortality. The girl, on the other hand, has been described as a mountain nymph who was very simple, who was very innocent, who simply wanted to be to be with the family and who simply wanted a company. So, they both were totally contrasting in characters. The last question says, how does the writer develop the suspense in the story? The writer has actually created a very mysterious kind of an air in the entire family. Be it the entry of this guest, the way the entry of the guest has been described to us, the footsteps were unheard, the footsteps heralded something bad. At the beginning or the entry of the guest, there was the wailing and the moaning sound that could be heard. Then the writer further told us about those three men who came onto the doorstep of this family, who were on the wagon. So those three men, they came onto the doorstep of the family, but probably they did not have the common fate and they just went away from there. If they would also have entered the cottage, then their destiny was the same. So they went away from there. Then the grandmother narrating her superstition and how she believed that a corpse also wanted to look all right. All these things created an atmosphere of suspense and mystery throughout the plot. So, my dear students, with this, we come to the end of this chapter. The entire chapter has been taught to you well. All the words, all the sentences have been explained. The back exercises have been discussed with you at length. So I hope the chapter is very much clear to you. I shall see you all now in my next lecture. Thank you.